morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday Sony finally gave Passengers a green light. Now, we've been discussing Passengers quite a bit here on both Morning Movie News and Beyond the Trailer because it's a hot property on the horizon because it's set to star Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt, two of the biggest live-action movie stars currently working today in the same movie. So why has Sony been reluctant to greenlight such a film? Well, as we've discussed, it's because it has a ridiculously large budget, $90 million for a sci-fi romantic comedy. And as we've just seen demonstrated by Mad Max Fury Road, studios have to be responsible when putting together budgets for films in that they have to have a reasonable expectation as to what the return on their investment will be. Because apparently, just making a quality film isn't enough, because as we all agree, you can't get a more quality film than Mad Max Fury Road. But Mad Max is having a very hard time getting into the black. And we will discuss Mad Max Fury Road today as well, because they just keep on trucking and they're trying to keep themselves in the news, and they succeeded yesterday. But anyway, we're discussing Passengers right now. So Passengers, why did it finally get the green light yesterday? Well, obviously, Jurassic World, which was a box office juggernaut. It is the biggest opening of all time, both worldwide and domestically, and Marvel even conceded after many Marvel fans and the Wall Street Journal tried to keep the number in their corner, the title in their corner. But Kevin Feige very graciously tweeted a bit of artwork. It was so good it looked almost like a photo that he had someone, one of the copious artists at his disposal via Marvel, whip up. It was a really cute little nod to Jurassic World, but I think at the same time also reminded everyone that Chris Pratt was the star of that, and he made Chris Pratt a star, as many Marvel fans also pointed out. But anyway, now Sony wants to utilize the Chris Pratt potency, and so that's why they greenlit the film. They said, well, we feel a little bit better about this doing big business at the box office itself, because it stars Chris Pratt. Now, I said I felt that he deserved $20 million on Movie Math on Monday, but Sony does not agree with me, and I guess his agents couldn't get them up higher, up to the $20 million mark, but they did squeeze out $2 more million from Sony. So he's gone from a $10 million payday on the film to a $12 million payday. Now don't forget, of course, that movie stars employ an entire team of people, from their agents and manager to their lawyer to their publicist to often their stylist. Even male stars have stylists these days. And of course, Chris Pratt has to pay a physical trainer because keeping in shape has been the cornerstone of the new phase of his career. But anyway, taking all of that into mind, I have to say that even as someone who is into business myself, and I usually understand these paydays, I was pretty appalled at Jennifer Lawrence's payday for Passengers. So appalled that if I were Sony, I would not have greenlit this film, because I just think that it puts a really negative spin on the whole project. So let me tell you what Jennifer Lawrence is getting. Well, she's getting the $20 million, which I think she deserves, right? I mean, I think she's a big star, she's able to drive a lot of press and media attention, and she has a very strong fan base. So give her $20 million, no problem. That's not my problem. The problem is that it was divulged that she'll also be getting 30% of the profit of the film. Now, of course, there might be some mighty creative accounting going on, as is always the case with the movie business. Although after the Sony hack, there might be a little bit more transparency. But so far, nobody's holding a gun to Sony's head saying, "Show us your numbers." But let's see how powerful Jennifer Lawrence's management team is. But anyway, 30% of the profit. So it's going to be much smaller than the box office gross, but still, that is a huge amount of money to give to someone who I feel is only minimally contributing. Not minimally, that's not fair, but I don't think that Passengers is like totally reliant on Jennifer Lawrence, right? It's got Morton Tildum directing. He's supposed to get a couple $1 million too as a payday, coming off of The Imitation Game, which I think is ridiculous. I'd be like, hey, your reward is that you get to make this sci-fi movie. I mean, give him maybe he's getting like $2 or $3 million, which seems reasonable, but I didn't think The Imitation Game was particularly well directed. But this isn't I guess my problem with it is that such a large amount of money and such a big cut of the profit of the film that it's almost like, hey, instead of giving my money to the movie theater, why don't I just personally write a check out to Jennifer Lawrence? It's just too much. And I don't, if it was Quentin Tarantino or another artiste filmmaker, I'd be like, hey, it's his vision, his or her vision. I'm happy to give you the money. You deserve it. I'm glad you're getting a big cut of what you did. George Lucas with Star Wars, right? Reinvented the entire Hollywood industry. Steven Spielberg, these are people who, they produce the film, they oversee every step of it, they're directing it. Often, Quentin Tarantino has written it as well. you know, it's very much their project, right? But Jennifer Lawrence is just one part of a very large operation. And I think that Chris Pratt is going to bring the same amount, if not more, people into the theater. So where's his percentage of the box office profit, right? And I know that people like Robert Downey Jr. and Harrison Ford have gotten profit participation in the past, but that's for their iconic roles, right? Like Iron Man and Indiana Jones. They're like, you can't make this movie without me, and I think we'd all say, yeah, that's true. But I think you could easily cast somebody else opposite Chris Pratt in Passengers, and the movie would still do very well. That is, if people can get over the premise. If you don't know the premise, it's that all these human beings are traveling to another solar system or something for a new life, and it takes like 90 years to get there. And Chris Pratt's, stasis tube malfunctions. Now, he doesn't end up on a planet of the apes, and I'm not going to ruin the surprise at the end of that movie if you haven't seen it, the multiple versions. But anyway, instead he's just stuck in this ship and he's like, well, I'm going to die naturally before we get to wherever we're going. Now, I think that he should wake up an engineer and be like, hey, put me back to sleep. But instead he decides to wake up a woman to keep him company, like an Adam and Eve type situation, for the rest of this trip or their lives, I guess, whichever ends first. However, I have to say, I'd be like, I hope you checked the ship's manifest and made sure she was traveling alone, or else you're going to have to wake up her entire family. And I think she'd be pretty upset that you doomed her to die in this, like, metal cargo container instead of live out a nice life on the planet that she signed up to do, right? So I'd be interested to see how the movie can get over that initial hurdle and not make her resent him for, like, 90 plus years or however long they live. I would just wake up an engineer. I'd be like, you made a mistake waking me up. Let's go find somebody here who can put us back to sleep. But anyway, I'm curious. What do you think of Jennifer Lawrence's deal here? Do you think that it is something that might affect how you see the movie? Or do you like, hey, it's business as usual. This is Hollywood. Good for her that she got that amount of money. Sony gave it to her. So I am proud to give Jennifer Lawrence my money. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, I promised you some Mad Max discussion, and here it is. It's actually quite exciting, and it's somewhat of a lovely, lovely day for Mad Max Fury Road. They made headlines yesterday, and they have a headline they're making today. Now, the first is a really cute story. I don't know if you saw it, but two of the stunt people on Mad Max Fury Road, the woman who doubled for Charlize Theron as Furiosa, and one of Tom Hardy's stand-ins, not his main stand-in, but one of them, they fell in love while filming the movie in 2012, and they have gotten married and just recently had a baby. And I thought that was adorable! And they said that, when they were having the fight sequences together, so I was like, oh, that movie did a really good job of, like, subbing in stunt doubles because, it's very hard. Sometimes when you watch a movie, you're like, you're totally hiding the person's face. That's not them. But with Mad Max Fury Road, they did a really good job hiding the doubles. But anyway, apparently in that fight sequence, outside the tanker, when Furiosa and Mad Max first meet, that utilizes a lot of double work, which I'm very impressed with. And apparently, while they were filming that scene, they both were like, sparks were flying between the two of them on the romantic level. So I thought that was a really cute story, and it's a great way to keep the movie in the news. But also, here's the real kicker. I think that if you're a Furiosa fan, or just a Mad Max fan in general, that you're going to want to head over to Comixology today, because DC is releasing a Furiosa comic. It's a prelude to Mad Max Fury Road. It's written by George Miller, and it has various artists working on it. It's going to tell, basically, I believe, the origin story of Furiosa, which many of us have been wondering about, right? We're like, why is she not one of his breeders? How'd she lose half of her arm? And how did she become so high up in his army, right? And Morton Joe's army. Well, this miniseries says it's going to answer all those questions and hopefully more. So I'll put a link below in the video description to where you can get that comic, and I will certainly be reading it as well. So a great way to keep the story alive and I think hopefully renew a little bit more interest. It's so far away from 400 million where it needs to be. It's so dispiriting. I just actually checked the numbers on it yesterday. It's about 334. It's like the #9 performing film of the year. But like Home, the DreamWorks animation movie, has made more money than Mad Max Fury Road. San Andreas has made more money than Mad Max Fury Road at this point. Cinderella, of course, 50 Shades of Grey. Kingsman has also made more. And I'm just very disappointed in Mad Max Fury Road's inability to get up where it needs to be. All right, so the third story of the day, this is a fun story, all right? I had a hard time deciding what story to cover, and I know a number of you were like, please, cover Princess Diaries 3. But I was like, oh, you're gonna thank me for covering this story instead. And that is, as you can see, a Winona Ryder story. And Winona Ryder is the latest celebrity, not quite Brad Pitt level, but still impressive, to head to Netflix, where she will be headlining a supernatural 8-episode miniseries in 2016. But get this! It is going to be not only a supernatural thriller, but it is a love letter to the 80s, the type of films that, of course, made Winona Ryder famous in the first place. In this one, she will play the mother of a young boy, like a 2-year-old boy, who disappears into thin air, and she's part of the investigation to get him back and to find out where he went. And it leads into like government experiments and conspiracies and like, again, supernatural occurrences. And they say she has to dig deep for the strength she didn't know that she had. It's I love pitches. They're so much fun. And that's particularly fun when you like really believe in them and sell them. You know, like just like in like a movie trailer. I think it's so much fun. So anyway, the Winona Ryder series, I think, sounds pretty awesome. It is, wouldn't you know it, from 2 of the writers on Wayward Pines. There are some similarities to Wayward Pines, although I hope this doesn't go off the rails quite like Wayward Pines did in last week's episode. I'm hoping they can course correct this week, because I was not happy last week. But anyway, I believe it's brothers, Matt and Ross Duffer, and they will also direct. They will write and direct all 8 episodes, and I'm sure that Netflix is going to feel very good about this. Although I have to say, I'm curious, some Netflix series hit, some don't. And I also saw an article the other day about people being saying that the binge watching thing that Netflix has tried to pioneer hasn't really worked out, because there isn't a shared experience. You know, everybody watches it at a different rate. I think Daredevil was an exception, because everybody just decided to watch it the same weekend, right? Everyone's like, I'm just going to speed watch it as fast as possible. But it was a very slow window, and I don't think people talked about Daredevil quite as much as they would if it had aired, you know, every week. And I think a really good example that was brought up in this article was Game of Thrones, right? Everybody talks about it every Monday morning after what happens on Sunday night. It is the place to be. And you don't see that happening with the Netflix shows. So I don't think there'd be any shame in Netflix deciding not to, you know, mass dump their shows. But I'm curious to how you feel about it. I mean, even Orange is the New Black creator, I forget her name. It's like Joni Kenner or something. Even she came out and said, I don't like binge watching. And I was like, whoa, until someone else offers to pick up your show, I would, you know, ixnay on the Netflix dissing. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day. Very curious to see how you feel about that. Do you think Winona Ryder's career can be brought back to life? Or do you think that TV is a good place for her to just stay? Or the small screen, I guess, in this case. So anyway, I have a viewer question. I thought this was a great one. This is from Karan Sunil. And Karan says, Grace, I've got a question. Now, with Jurassic World doing so well, do you think this is going to affect how other studios will handle their big franchises? It did so well. You know, as you might have seen, and as I believe I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, but I want to make sure I bring it up in case I forgot, but Jurassic World had the biggest Monday also of all time that wasn't a holiday, pulling in $25.6 million. So it continues to be a juggernaut. So Karan says, will this affect how other studios handle their big franchises? Its huge opening is kind of a slap in the face to the idea that a tentpole picture needs to now be part of an ever-expanding multi-film universe. Not so fast, Karan. We'll talk about that in a moment. What changes in the industry do you see overall? Do you think we will be seeing more monster movies come forward? Exciting stuff. Side note, how did Jurassic World overperform by so much? No one expected this, right? That's right, Karan. Thanks for consistently putting out quality content. Your videos are always a joy to see in my subscriber feed. Wishes from the UAE, United Arab Emirates, I believe, and then some smiley faces. Thank you, Karan. I hope you're having a wonderful day in the UAE, and I hope this makes your feed extra special today because your question is being answered. All right, so great question again. So I don't know about monster movies because Godzilla had a very good, opening salvo, but then everybody was horribly disappointed in the film. Much more so than Jurassic World. I think most people think Jurassic World is a good film, but not a great film. But certainly not, it's a good summer popcorn movie, I guess you could say. Whereas I think some of us, including myself, were disappointed because we expected, like the first one, to be at that level, which I guess kind of in retrospect is a little ridiculous because, considering who's working on the film, Colin Trevorrow, who's no Steven Spielberg. But I think he did a nice job, and he, of course, obviously delivered big time for Universal. And Chris Pratt. I think Chris Pratt obviously is the big star. I think that's the biggest change coming out of this Quran, that Chris Pratt is now a movie star. Done. It's done. He's anointed. He is going to be he is a huge star. And you're probably going to see that reflected in the projects that he works on, the way he's treated, the way he's covered in the media, etc. All right, so Is this a slap in the face to tentpole pictures being part of an ever-expanding multi-universe? I don't think so, because I wouldn't be surprised if Jurassic World tries to go in that direction, right? I mean, also, this only reinforces the situation that old, proven brands are the best bet, right? This wasn't an original idea, like Mad Max, well, even Mad Max Fury Road, but that was an old brand, an even older brand that never reached the popularity, of course, of the Jurassic Park series. So you might see more older franchises brought back because of this. That could be, Hollywood always likes to, grab onto the coattails of a success, so you might see that happen there. But I do think that this just, again, underlines the importance of brands, franchises, known commodities, right? So you're going to see that double down. I think what it does change isn't so much the multi-film universe situation, although I think the thing that could kill that is if the MCU starts to slowly crumble and implode, as we discussed yesterday. But anyway, I think this does show that comic book movies can be beaten. That's the big takeaway. And I think the other studios are going to be like, and also Disney as well, they're going to be like, okay, they don't have quite the death grip on the box office that we thought they did. Audiences are willing to see other things, and not everything has to be spandexy. So let's get other properties in there. And video games, as another BTT viewer mentioned the other day, are also coming in on the horizon in 2016. You have a number of video game movies that Hollywood is working on, where the video game companies themselves are involved. So you should expect a level of quality there that we haven't seen before in video game film adaptations. Warcraft and Assassin's Creed. So that could be very exciting indeed, and that could be the next wave of what people are interested in. But again, that's what it did. I think it showed a chink in the armor of superhero films. Now, as for your second question, how did Jurassic World overperform by so much? Now, everybody expected it to be very big. It was supposed to open with north of 100 million, but it did double that. And nobody expected it would become the biggest opening of all time. But I think what this underscores is that it's a reminder of how few people actually go to the movies, right? There are 300 million people plus in the United States, right? But only a mere fraction of that have to go to get a $100 million opening, actually. So that just shows that there's a whole bunch of potential audience members out there in the United States that are untapped. So what Hollywood needs to do is they need to find these ideas that get the non-moviegoer. Remember we talked about that survey that was done recently about how most people go only to the movies once a month, if that. Like there are I think it was like a third of the population never goes to the movies at all. And so maybe they made an exception for Jurassic World. That's where I think things were changed up here. That Jurassic World was such a high concept movie and it was so easily accessible. It's like, it's a theme park with dinosaurs. Remember Jurassic Park? We finally made a good sequel. And Chris Pratt, I think very likable, very relatable, particularly to the middle America demographic. He has a good old boy mentality. One of you mentioned that he just recently talked about hunting, how he loves to hunt. And while on the coasts, some of us might be like, that's appalling. There is a whole swath of people who usually don't go to the movies, by the way, who are like, oh, that guy, he gets me, I get him, I'm going to go see his movie. And that makes Chris Pratt very valuable. They'll be like, I can relate to him when he goes to space and wakes up from his hypersleep and can't go back to sleep. So we'll see how if Chris Pratt can deliver in every movie he's in. But so far, so good. I guess he was very relatable as Star-Lord, but still, that didn't do the numbers that Jurassic World did. Everybody knows dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are something that have been around, obviously, for a very long time and have enchanted, children for generations. And then when those children became adults, they still have a soft spot for dinosaurs. So basically, you had a great, simple concept that, didn't, offend anyone. Like Mad Max Fury Road, actually my dad went to see it and he didn't like Mad Max Fury Road. And I was like, what? And I said, how could you not like that movie? And he said, it just was not a nice environment. I thought it was a little crummy and it didn't make me feel nice. And I was like, interesting. So the takeaway from that, and be nice to my dad in the comments section. But anyway, the takeaway from that, I think is that, Jurassic World is bright and, cheery and, it's families. And, even though some of the family members might be annoying, I think that it's not offensive, right? It doesn't really take any risks. And I think Jurassic World is non-risk filmmaking at its absolute best. From the concept to the execution, to the casting, to, even the release. It was released in so many theaters that everyone could go and see it. Although some of you did tell me that you got sold out. So, I think that that's the reason it overperformed, that it just showed that if you can come up with something, I don't want to say bland enough, but agreeable enough, I guess is a good term, everyone will go. And we'll see what its second week performance is like, how much it drops. Although I was discussing this with somebody the other day, and we talked about the fact that if it even drops 50%, it will beat Inside Out as the top grossing film of the weekend, which will rob Disney yet again of an important headline. So it's on between Universal and Disney. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much, Karan, for your question. I hope that my answer was insightful to both parts and it gave you a little bit more perspective on the situation. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.